Back in 1987, one single report pretty much shook the world. It was called Our Common Future, and it didn't just list the planet's problems, it offered a radical new vision for how we could all survive together. It gave all of us a new language for progress, built around two words that would change everything: sustainable development. So the report kicks off with this really powerful image. From the quiet of space, our planet looked like a serene oasis, just this fragile ball of blue and green. But here's the kicker. The authors use that peaceful view to show us this brutal paradox. Because down on the ground, a storm of crises was raging, a reality that was completely at odds with that tranquility you see from above. So how exactly do we get from that sense of crisis to this huge global call for action? Well, here's the journey we're going to take. First, we'll look at the world of crises that started it all. Then we'll see the ambitious mandate for change that came next. We'll dive deep into the core definition of sustainable development, see how it inseparably links economy and ecology, redefines what kind of growth we need, and finally, face the unfinished task it leaves for all of us today. All right, to really get why this report was such a big deal, you have to picture what the world was like back then. The mid-'80s. It was a time of these escalating, interlocking disasters that really demanded a whole new way of thinking. Just look at this timeline. This stuff wasn't happening over decades. All of this went down in the 900 days the commission was actually working. Think about that. A chemical leak, a nuclear catastrophe, massive famine. These weren't just abstract threats. They were hitting the headlines in real time. You can feel the sense of urgency, right? And here's what the report really nailed. These weren't just a bunch of random, unlucky events. No, they were all connected symptoms of what it called a downward spiral. Poverty was making the environment worse, and a worse environment was trapping people in poverty. It was this vicious cycle, and it was jeopardizing the future of our entire planet. So, with this domino effect of failure, it's pretty clear the world was desperate for a new way forward, right? And that desperation is what led to the creation of the World Commission on Environment and Development. So, back in 1983, the UN General Assembly sets up this independent commission, and they were smart about it. They brought in leaders and scientists from all over, different political systems, and, this is key, a majority from developing nations. That was totally intentional. They wanted a truly global perspective for what was, let's be honest, a massive goal, forging nothing less than a global agenda for change. The commission's chair, Gro Harlem Brundtland, even said later that their mission felt, and I'm quoting here, impossibly ambitious. And you can see why. They weren't just asked to write a report. Their job was to build a whole new global consensus, a shared vision strong enough to guide all of humanity towards a safer, more sustainable future. No pressure, right? Okay, so after years of work, holding public hearings on 5 different continents, the commission finally delivered its answer. And right at the core of it was this one simple, elegant, and totally world-changing idea. And here it is. This is the definition that changed everything. Now, it looks simple, right? But don't let that fool you. This is a huge ethical commitment. It's basically saying that we can't build our progress today by stealing from tomorrow. It creates this direct, unbreakable link between what we do now and the well-being of future generations. This wasn't just a new definition, it was a complete revolution in how we think. So let's unpack that a little. The whole concept really balances on 2 key ideas: needs on one hand and limitations on the other. First, it puts the essential needs of the world's poorest people front and center. It makes fighting poverty the top priority. But at the same time, it forces us to recognize that our planet has limits that are shaped by our technology and how we organize ourselves. It's a call to balance our human ambitions with the planet's boundaries. So what's the first big takeaway from this new definition? Well, it absolutely shattered a myth that had been around for a long, long time, the idea that you could separate economic policy from the health of the environment. The report basically said, nope, not only is that wrong, it's dangerous. This quote right here, it just gets to the absolute heart of the report's logic. It reframes the whole conversation. The environment isn't this other thing out there. It's our home. It's where we live. And development, that's just what we do to try and make our lives better inside our home. When you see it like that, the conclusion is obvious. You can't treat economic and ecological policies separately. They're 2 sides of the very same coin. And this connection is absolutely critical. The report made it crystal clear. You can't solve environmental problems if you ignore poverty, and you can't end poverty if you don't protect the environment. Think about it. When people are desperate, they might be forced to degrade their local environment just to survive, which only makes the poverty worse. The only way to break that cycle is to tackle both problems together as one big interconnected issue. Okay, so if the economy and the environment are totally linked, does that mean we just have to, stop all economic growth to save the planet? Well, the report's answer to that was a huge, resounding no. But, and this is a big but, it demanded a completely different kind of growth. And that's a really crucial point. Sustainable development isn't about hitting the pause button on the world. It's a dynamic process of change. It actually calls for a new era of economic growth, especially for developing nations where billions of people still don't have their basic needs met. So the goal wasn't to stop growth. It was to completely redefine what progress even looks like. And the report laid out a pretty clear game plan for this new kind of growth. Step 1, you have to revive growth, especially to lift people out of poverty. But, and here's the revolutionary bit, at the same time, you have to change the quality of that growth. Make it smarter, more efficient, way less intensive on materials and energy. This growth also has to be fair, equitable, and it has to actively protect the natural resources that our economies depend on in the first place. And the report was not shy about who needed to lead this charge. It argued that the industrialized nations, the ones who had already used up a huge share of the world's resources, had a moral responsibility to pioneer these new, less wasteful lifestyles and technologies. They had to create a path that the rest of the world could actually follow sustainably. So the report doesn't wrap everything up with a neat little bow. Instead, it ends with a challenge, a powerful call to action that honestly feels even more urgent today than it did back in 1987. This quote, wow, it powerfully reframes our whole impact on the environment as a kind of debt. We are borrowing environmental capital from our kids and grandkids, from people who aren't even here yet. They have no voice, no vote, and zero power to challenge the decisions we're making right now. It's a deeply ethical statement about our responsibility to the people who will inherit whatever world we decide to leave them. And that brings us to the final, really urgent question, doesn't it? Our common future gave us a new compass decades ago. The question for us today is, are we finally paying attention to it? Or are we just racking up an ecological debt that future generations can never, ever hope to repay? The clock is definitely ticking.